What's up guys, my name is Gary and you're watching Gary Mason Travels. This is the second part to my four-part documentary series on why would you want to visit India. Now, there are eight fundamental reasons why you would want to visit there. And obviously, I was just showing off my counting skills. Hope you're impressed. Obviously, different reasons appeal to different people, and more than one reason can appeal to a person, but obviously some reasons will appeal to others more. So I want to go through each one in detail to make everything clear and concise for all of my readers and followers. In this episode, I will be talking about those people who are there on a spiritual quest, some kind of spiritual pursuit, which is, as you can imagine, is quite an odd topic to try and discuss and to articulate. And then we've got those people who are there for the wildlife. Excuse me. That is definitely me. I love Indian wildlife. Indian wildlife is for me. And those people who are drawn there to the landscapes. And that sounds like a bit of an odd thing as well. Like, why would you go somewhere for the landscapes? But we will get into that. And I think I'm going to get into that first. Should we get into that first? I think that sounds like a good idea. Now, India has 26 states. And each one of those states is radically different from the next. And you can go as many times as you want to India and it can feel continuously like you're going to a new country. I'm sorry about that. He's a very unruly rooster. So anyway, every time you go to a new state, you can feel like you're going to a new country. And the problem is with that is you can only see so much on one trip, right? And so it's important to know where to focus your time because the landscapes are really, really impressive. And so you've got to think about what it is that you want. What do you really want? And again, in my planning a trip to India in 5 easy steps, that is the first point that I make. And that's step one. And step one and step two, how long are you going to go? And what do you want? They're the two hardest questions to answer. And landscapes play a huge part in there. Let me explain. Okay, I'm going to go and do something about him. I will be back in just a second. Okay, I am back and the chicken has been dealt with. Where was we? Landscapes. How does that dictate to you where it is that you're going to go? Well, because you could just think, well, how is this a contributing factor? But think logically about it. Say you're a hedonist and you just want to feel the toes in between your sands and you want to lay there in a hammock and watch the tide go in and out. What would that imply for you? Well, you would have to go to Kerala, Karnataka, Goa or Tamil Nadu on the main part of the subcontinent. Or you could also invest your time into Lakshadweep and particularly the Andaman Islands. The Andaman Islands are gorgeous. But if you do that, that involves you spending a lot of time and a lot of money into going. And so that will greatly dictate the direction of your trip. So the landscapes is fundamental. And there are so many of them. You know, you've got deserts, you've got jungles, mountains. And when I say mountains, the Himalayas, the foothills is very, very different to the high mountain deserts. So you need to really put some thought into there of what it is that you want to see because it involves a lot of time and a lot of money. And even with half a year, you'll be lucky if you see very much. So think carefully about what it is when it comes to landscapes. It is probably the most important, although it doesn't sound like it. Because if you come there for to see Rudyard Kipling's Jungle Book sort of countryside, which there's plenty of, you know, and you see, or you want to see the high mountain high mountain deserts of the far north, where people go and meditate with the monks, or go and find yourself on a long walk in the hills. All this stuff is all very possible, but you need to think very carefully about what it is that you want. I would hope that it has become a little bit more clear why landscapes is such a big contributing factor. What kind of landscape is it that appeals to you? Because you can't see it all. You can't see it all in one trip. It's impossible. There's no point you trying, even with a year. Think about what it is that appeals to you, because Lord knows India has a lot to offer, and then focus your time there. So now I'm going to move on to the next reason, which is wildlife, which is one of my personal favourites, and this is why I have made a presentation. Let me know what you think of this.
India, home to almost 1.4 billion human beings. There are more people living in New Delhi than there are in all of Australia. There are more than 230 million people living in Uttar Pradesh. That's almost 2/3 of the population of the United States, all crammed into an area approximately the size of Texas. With numbers like this, it can seem like the natural world has no place here. In truth, there are still vast swaths of land where the natural world can thrive. About 1.23% of the country is considered protected area, and I know that number seems small, but that is still more than 40 million square kilometres. That space is divided up into 104 national parks and sanctuaries that are very unevenly distributed across the subcontinent. They are home to an extraordinary diversity of life. Almost 8% of all the species to be found on the planet live in this one country. That makes India one of the 12 mega diversity hotspots. There are over 1,300 species of bird alone. Tourists come from all over the world to have the chance to marvel at their splendour, and quite rightly so. There are also 410 species of mammal, or 8.86% of all the species to be found anywhere. These include some of the most impressive species of megafauna to be found on the planet today, such as the Bengali tiger, the Asian elephant, the one-horned rhinoceros, snow leopard, the Indian leopard, the striped hyena, and the whole world's population of Asiatic lions, to name just a few. India is your best bet to see large numbers of mammals outside of Africa. There are also 518 species of reptile, including 279 species of snake. These come in every conceivable form. There are also 410 species of amphibian, and 50% of that number can be found nowhere else on Earth. There are also 18,000 species of plant for all the botanists out there, and a completely undetermined number of insects. Put short, India is a wildlife enthusiast's paradise. India's diverse array of landscapes have given rise to a mind-bending number of species. Obviously, some are more suited than others to life. The warm, damp conditions of the tropics harbour many times the number of species that can be found elsewhere in places such as India's deserts. However, life can cling on to every niche, and the land can be both bountiful and unforgiving. There's a very good reason why the wildlife is a big draw in India, and it's all just waiting for you to explore. So what are you waiting for?
What did you think, guys? Did you like it? I hope you enjoyed watching it half as much as I enjoyed making it. I really am passionate about the wildlife, and that kind of made me feel like Steven Spielberg. Now, on to the next bit, which is the final part of this documentary, and that is spiritual pursuit. It's going to be very difficult for me to even define what is a spiritual experience, let alone tell my viewers where do you go and get yourself one of these. It's a big topic to try and tackle, right? But it's a topic that I have to try and tackle because enough tourists have told me throughout the years they've gone travelling to India to either lose themselves or find themselves I don't even know what that means. Nevertheless, that means it's very relevant and something that I have to try and tackle. And presumably we're going there because people think that there is something in this country that they do not have in their own country, or perhaps they just want to expand on what they've already got. Certainly, when many of us close our eyes and we think of spiritualness, then most people's mind would go to Tibet, Nepal and India, wouldn't they? I think that's fair to say. So many of us go over there for this. In my last video, I said that there's a difference between a cultural experience and a spiritual experience, and we all know there is, but now I've said it and this video is about it, it's incumbent on me to give it a whirl, see if I can't explain it. Now I think the best way to define it is a cultural experience is interacting with people with another set of values different from your own. That's a cultural experience. And a spiritual experience is something that's very personal that happens to you because of an interaction with somebody else with another set of values different from our own. And okay, so let me elaborate on that. If you go to a Tibetan Gompa, which is a monastery far into the high Himalayas, if you was to go in there and you was to visit it, you would be interacting with a group of people who have very different values from your own. Therefore, that would be a cultural experience. But if you got up at 5 a.m. and you went to go and meditate with the monks, which is something frequently tourists do, you might find that you feel exceptionally calm and exceptionally happy from doing that, because it is very atmospheric, you know. And would that be construed as a spiritual experience? I guess that probably would. And but my most profound moments that most people would say as spiritual, I got from not being anywhere near anything that was religious. The one place that really sticks in my mind is I met this family in a shanty town. It was dirt poor, like really, really poor. And I went to their house and it was very kind, and they made me a cup of tea, and they said that when it rained, they had to stand up. Now, for me, I had never been more grateful to be me. I'd never been more grateful to be alive, and so fortunate that I've been in a position where I could come and meet these lovely people, and also how kind they was stuck in my head. Now, is that a spiritual experience? It's all a matter of perception, and I think I've said enough to engage some pretty good conversation. So if you want to leave any comments, you want to elaborate, you think I'm wrong, or you've got your own opinions, please leave your comments in the section below, because I am super interested in this. Just moving the camera for the lighting. I think that's it. So I don't consider myself to be especially spiritual, and I don't think people who know me would say, hey Gary, he's a really spiritual fella. And I don't really fit the stereotype, do I, of an Indian backpacker. I know when I've met girls before and they've become my girlfriend, their family and friends would say, oh, has he got really long hair and covered in tattoos? I think I'm a bit of a disappointment because I look like this. Stereotypes and heated debates aside, I will now talk about spiritual pursuits in India. I wasn't even sure what they was. So I had to look through the guidebooks, like The Lonely Planet, and I had to look online and see what everybody says, and I've got my list, and now I'm going to work through them. Number one on the list is Ayurvedic medicine for some reason. I'm not sure if that qualifies, but it's on there, so I'm going to cover it.